I told my dad to leave me alone. He never brought it up again. My dad walked into my room on a Tuesday night. I remember it was Tuesday because I had school the next day, and I remember I didn't care. I was 16, deep into a game, the kind of deep where the rest of the world stops existing. Room dark except for the screen, headphones on one ear. He knocked. I didn't answer. He opened the door anyway. "Hey," he said, "it's almost 11. I didn't turn around. "I know." "You've got school tomorrow." "I know, Dad." I could feel him standing there. That specific presence a parent has when they're waiting for you to do something you're not going to do. I kept playing. "How long have you been on that thing?" he asked. And that's when I felt it, that flicker of irritation, that specific, irrational annoyance when someone interrupts something you're doing, even if what you're doing doesn't matter, even if what they're saying is completely reasonable. I turned around, just slightly, not enough to really look at him. "I'll go to bed soon. Can you just give me a few minutes?" "You said that an hour ago." And then I did something I've thought about 1,000 times since. I turned back to the screen. I turned my back to my father. And I said, in that tone, the one every teenager perfects, I said, "Dad, please, just leave me alone." I heard him exhale. Then I heard the door close. Not slam. He didn't slam it. That would have been easier. A slammed door means anger, means a fight, means noise. This was quiet. A soft click. The kind of sound a person makes when they've decided not to push anymore. I kept playing. I don't remember when I finally went to bed. I just remember the door closing. I didn't think about that night again for a long time. That's the thing about moments like that. They don't feel like moments when they're happening. They feel like nothing. A small friction. The kind of thing that happens every other day in a house with a teenager. I graduated, moved out, got a job, got married. My dad and I talked on the phone sometimes, saw each other on holidays, did the things families do when the years quietly build distance between people without anyone deciding to let it happen. He never brought up that night. Not once. I never apologized. Not because I was holding on to anything, but because it never occurred to me there was something to apologize for. That's the part that gets me now. I didn't carry guilt. I just forgot. I moved on, the way teenagers move on from everything, completely, thoughtlessly, like nothing leaves a mark. I didn't know he remembered it. I didn't know he remembered everything. The first time I really thought about that night again, my son was 8 years old. I was at the kitchen table working on my laptop. I could hear the sounds from his tablet down the hall, the beeps and music of whatever game he was into that month. School night, getting late. I got up, walked down the hall, knocked on his door. "Yeah?" he said, didn't look up. I opened the door, room dark except for the screen, headphones on one ear. "Hey," I said, "it's almost 9:30. "I know." "School tomorrow." "I know, Dad." I stood there in the doorway, and something shifted. Not in the room. Somewhere inside my chest. I was looking at the back of my son's head, at the blue-white glow of the screen on his face, and I was suddenly, completely somewhere else. I was in a different room, standing in a different doorway. And I understood, for the first time, in a way that felt almost physical, I understood what my father had been standing in. It wasn't about the game. It was never about the game. It took me 20 years to understand that. Here's what I think my dad was actually trying to do that night. I say think because I can't ask him anymore. That's what I have to live with now. He wasn't there to lecture me. He wasn't there because he had some rigid rule about bedtimes. He came because he could feel me slipping away, and he didn't know how to stop it. That's what he was standing in the doorway for. Not to shut the computer off, just to be near me, to have me turn around and talk to him for 5 minutes. Because parents feel it, that slow disconnection, and they don't always have the words for it. They come to your door at 11 at night, and they talk about bedtimes because they don't know how to say, "I feel like I'm losing you, and I don't know what to do about it." I told him to leave me alone, so he did, quietly, like it didn't matter, even if it did. And I didn't even understand what I had just done. He died when my son was 4, which means my son doesn't remember him, which means there are things I never got to fix, a Tuesday night I never got to go back to. I've imagined the conversation so many times, the one I should have had. Nothing dramatic, just a regular afternoon, a phone call out of nowhere. Me saying, "Hey Dad, you remember that time you told me to get off the computer and I told you to leave me alone?" And him laughing and saying something like, "Which time?" And me saying, "I'm sorry. I think I knew what you were trying to do. I'm sorry I didn't let you." 3 minutes. That's all it would have taken. I never made that call. I'd give anything for 30 seconds now. I have a 16-year-old now, and there have been nights where I've knocked on his door and gotten exactly what my father got from me. The distracted, yeah. The not quite turning around. The, "I know, Dad, I know." I don't push. I say what I need to say and I go back down the hall. Every single time, I understand my father more. Here's what I know now. When a parent comes to the door, they already know you're not going to listen. They know it before they knock. They come anyway. Because showing up, even when you know you'll be turned away, is better than not showing up. Tell them to leave you alone. They feel it. They don't say anything. They just go back down the hall. My father went back down that hall more times than I'll ever know. And he came back the next day. Because that's what fathers do. I just couldn't see it when I was 16. My dad was 41 the night he stood in my doorway. I've been older than that for a few years now, which is a strange thing to sit with, being older than your father was at a moment you can still remember clearly. He was 41, tired from work, coming to the door of his teenage son's room at 11 o'clock at night, just trying to make some small connection before the day ended. And I couldn't give him 30 seconds. If your father is still alive, I want to say something to you, and I want you to really hear it. You don't have to make it a big thing. No long conversation, no processing, no emotional breakthrough. You don't have to bring up whatever it is that sits between you. Just call him. This week, maybe today. Talk about nothing. Let him hear your voice. Because the door he's been standing in, he's still there, still hoping you'll turn around. Turn around while you still can. If your father is gone, then you're somewhere I've been. It doesn't always look like grief the way people picture it. Sometimes it's quieter than that. A specific kind of silence. The awareness of a question that will never get answered. A conversation that got delayed too long and then became impossible. You did the best you could with what you knew then. So did he. He didn't need a perfect son. He needed the one he had. That's what he loved. Whatever your Tuesday night was, it was one moment. Neither of you were defined by it. But carry it forward. Let it change how you show up at the door for your own kids. Let it make you patient when they don't turn around. That's the only apology that still means something now. I still walk past my son's room at night and see the glow under the door. I still knock. He still says, "Yeah," without looking up. I still open the door and stand there longer than I need to, not waiting for him to turn around, just being there for 30 more seconds. My father taught me that, not with any advice he ever gave me. He taught me by coming to the door. Every single time he came to the door, and I didn't turn around. If this reminded you of something, you already know what to do.